All right, the last grain size that we have beyond sandstone are the gravel particles. These are conglomerates up here, and these two down here are breccias. So remember, to be a conglomerate, it must be composed of primarily gravel-sized particles. In between the gravel particles, there could be sand or mud. And the conglomerates have rounded particles, but breccia have more angular particles. So angular particles is breccia. Rounded particles or subrounded particles are conglomerates. So these two are breccias because of those angular grains, but in between is some sand. So that is a typical thing that we would expect in a conglomerate. In order for, conglomerates formed don't usually have just gravel. In between, there's often sand particles or mud that gets collected. So we would usually see these larger particles with a sand or mud matrix. Now sometimes there's so many gravel particles that they're touching, in which we would say it's grain supported. Sometimes they're farther apart, and so we might say it is mud supported if it had mud. Now this one doesn't have mud, but the gravel particles are farther apart. They're not really touching. So that is another thing that we can look at. So if we look at something like this conglomerate, we see that there are rounded particles. These pebbles are mixed in with sand-sized particles, very common in conglomerates. We would expect something like this to be in a stream. If you remember the stream gravel is a mixture of sand and rounded to subrounded particles. So these pebbles are mostly going to be subrounded to rounded, and then there's sand in between. So this sediment could become this rock if compacted and cemented or lithified later. So this one has these ones all have a lot of iron mixed in with them. So they are probably stream deposits as well. This one is from Bastrop, much younger. This is on the order of maybe 20 million years old. These are 500 and some million years old. I don't actually know the age of this one. These are probably around 20 some million years old as well. These are from near Huntsville, near Bastrop, near Fredericksburg. And that one, I don't know where it's from. So those are conglomerates. When we have this particular one, because it's so angular, that means probably the situation was that now notice these grains are all the same kind. They're all kind of like a very fine grain rock. So these could be a mud that kind of stuck together and got ripped up. But because of the formation that it's in, there's a good probability that these are actually pieces of tuff, because the Catahoula Formation has some volcanic deposits in it up near Huntsville. And so these might be actually pieces of tuff that got broken apart either by a stream or by a volcanic eruption or whatever, and then in between it was mixed in with some sand. So that's very common for breccias. These, in order to get rounded, typically are in streams. So that's where we would usually see gravel. Streams or beaches. If they're really well rounded, they could be beaches. To be subrounded to rounded, streams. And those are the end of the siliciclastics.